Mr. James Krishna Floyd, hello, how are you? My name is Juan Pablo Lagunes from Fuera de Foco, Mexico. I'm very happy to be here. How are you?
I'm good. ¿De dónde eres en México exactamente?
From the center of it, it
Centro.
is named Querétaro. I don't know if you
Querétaro. Muy bien. No, no sé.
speak very good Spanish.
No, yo hablo un poco, pero inglés es más mejor.
Great. Well, I know that this may be the kind of question that you're tired of, but can you please tell us a little bit about the story of No Man's Land for the audience that we have that don't know the show?
Sure. So No Man's Land is an international drama thriller that's set in Syria during the peak of the civil war in 2014 to 2015. And it's about a whole host of international characters who end up in the middle of that war for very different reasons. And they all have very human stories and interests, and all of those tangents end up colliding together in a sort of very interesting way. And there are several stories that we go into. One of them is my story, which is a young British Muslim called Nasser, who ends up working his way up ISIS because he's working for the British government as a mole, as a double agent, and giving information about their movements. But really, he's there because he wants to save his two best friends, Iyad and Paul, who have ended up fighting for the Islamic State, and he wants to save their lives.
Great. And I believe that one can see from the trailer that this is a very physically demanding role. So I wanted to ask you, how was that physical preparation and the research process that you surely had to do?
Yeah, so I have a trainer that I use for all of my roles, whether I need to put on weight or lose weight or whatever, and I sometimes use a nutritionist as well. So with this one, it was a very specific type of regime that we used before I started shooting. Nasser would have had a particular training from the British military, so he basically just copied the exact routines that they would have done, and I tried to eat the kind of food that he would eat. So that's where that came from. And yeah, I think it's a very physical show in another way because my character's storyline is all about his friendship with his best mates that he's grown up with, and they're as close as brothers. I mean, in fact, they're closer than brothers, and they're very physical people. They're very tactile, and a lot of that friendship, I think, probably comes across in the trailer, but also physically in the series. You know, the idea of touch, I think, is very important to characters like that.
Yeah. And okay, No Man's Land tells a story set in Asia and Europe about an Arab conflict. So I wanted to ask you, what elements does it have to make this story universal? Or why do people in this part of the world who don't have anything to do with it should watch it?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the big mistakes I think of television and film that's made by the West that's set in the Middle East is
Mhm.
that they tend to be overly political, and they tend to be a way of either creating a debate or even worse, giving you an answer to what the filmmakers think, socio-politically about the region. The conflict in Syria is an extremely complicated and, you know, often contradictory, subjective thing. And it would be crazy to tell a dramatic fictional story that was trying to deal with that. We were telling the human story. We were telling the story of the people on the ground, the people who just have basic needs and basic wants and desires, the same ones that you and I have. Whether it be Antoine, the French character who's trying to search for his sister that he thinks may or may not be dead, whether it's my character who's trying to save his friends from being killed and how far will he go for that, or whether it's Saria, the character played by Suela, who is a female Kurdish fighter for the YPJ, who is basically trying to find out who she is and what she's fighting for. These are all things that we can all relate to, So in many ways, we were making a show that is apolitical, and in some ways, we're trying to take a genre and flip it on its head, but at the same time, keep it authentic and keep it real.
That's great, like a fresh thing on television, no, right now.
Mm. Yeah.
And well, the show isn't afraid of portraying how tough the world is. I don't know if you agree on that. So, what do you think about this? Should every TV show be this brave and try to represent as accurately as No Man's Land how the world really works?
Yeah. I think especially if you're doing drama and you want it to be naturalism and you want it to you want it to be realistic, I think it should be. I think especially when you're telling a story that is set in a culture or a location that is very different to where you're from, one that you don't necessarily know. I think it's your responsibility to go even further and find people that know what's real and collaborate with them. Like, so for example, for me, I'm playing a character who speaks Arabic. He doesn't speak fluent Arabic, but he speaks Arabic. So it was really important for me to go on that journey and really speak the kind of Arabic that my character would speak. And I spent a long time with two different coaches
Mhm.
who helped me to get that right. And I felt like if I didn't get that right, not only would my character not work, but I think in some ways the whole series wouldn't work. So, it's authenticity. I think is something that is always important, especially in drama. But I think now you have to be even more sensitive to it, or as sensitive as I've always been, because quite rightly audiences are brutal, and I think they should be. And I'm pretty sure No Man's Land will stand up to that test very, very well.
Mhm. Um, Now, I would like to ask you some personal questions.
Sure.
Uh, we see a character like having a call of action based on a leap of faith. So I would
Mhm.
like to know what are the things that we should do based on leaps of faith, like for you.
It's a really good question, man. I mean, for me, I can only speak from my own experiences, yeah. But
Mhm.
I have a son. I've got a 4-year-old son. So I think my leap of faith was him, was having him. I think having children is a massive leap of faith. You're basically rolling the dice. I mean, you're going into the casino and you're putting all your money out on the table and your heart out on the roulette, spin, and you're just going, right, that's it. Let's see where this goes for someone else, for another tiny human being. So for me, that's very important. Being a parent in and of itself is a massive leap of faith. And if you don't take that leap of faith and you, in some ways, let go of control and understand that it's not about you, it's about this little kid, I think that's a really honorable thing to do. But for me, that's, the only leap of faith I take is for those sort of things, is for loved ones.
That's a very, very nice answer. I really like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Thanks,
I
bro.
think this next question can be related to what you just said, because I wanted to ask you how far would you go, or what would you do? What would you be willing to do to find the person that you love the most, just as Antoine?
That's a really good question. What would I be willing to do? I mean, you know what? You never know until you get in that situation. But I would imagine probably anything. I mean, I'm an extremist, in that regard. Like when I do something, I really go for it, like in the obsessive way. So again, just thinking of my son, who is someone that I love in a way that you could never imagine. It's a love that's impossible to describe. It's a feral love. I mean, literally, I would kill for him. I would murder a human being if I felt like I had to. And it sounds nuts, but that's the kind of love that I have for him. And also, it sounds very crazy and Hollywood action hero, but I would sacrifice my own love for him in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Yeah.
That is very, very nice to hear. So,
Yeah.
James, be wrapping up. You once said that one of the quotes that you love the most is the following: "The most important thing we can experience is the mysterious." So, I would like to ask you, how do you apply this to your experience playing Nasser?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. Well, what's interesting about Nasser is that he's religious. He's not a fanatic like his best friend Paul, and that's why Paul ends up fighting for the Islamic State and getting duped by their propaganda, really. Um, But Nasser is still a man of faith. So with him, that's where a lot of his mystery comes from. And that's also where a lot of his struggle comes from. So when you have a few of the twists and turns in the series that I won't give away, that challenges his faith, and it challenges his idea of fate and why he's been put on this earth and what is his job to do. So for Nasser, that is really important, that quote, because he has no choice but to let go by the end of the series, because as you see, he's no longer in control of his destiny. And that is something that you have to just accept, the enigma of life and the mystery of why the hell we're here. And yeah, that's the big thing that he and ultimately what he tries to, at the end of it, I'm not giving away any spoilers, but at the end of it, he realizes that all he really has is his friends, his you know, his human connections. And it doesn't make him an atheist by any means, but it changes his priorities a little bit. And that's the kind of mystery that he has to, in some ways, challenge, you know.
Great, James. Thank you for this conversation that we had.
Thanks, man.
Is there anything that you would like to say to Latin American audiences?
What I'd like to say to Latin American audiences, what's the meaning of life? That's what I want to say to them. Can they tell me that? You guys, come on, you guys must know the meaning of life. In Latin America, you've gone through a lot more than what we've gone through in Britain, and there's a lot more interesting. What's the meaning of life? Come on, tell me. I'll ask you, not Latin American audiences.
I don't know. Maybe the moments of joy, the moments of love. I really liked how you described the love that you feel for your child. So I hope that I can experience that myself. So I envy you.
Yeah. Well, don't believe, but honestly, don't. It's not easy as well. You lose a lot of sleep.
Yeah. I can imagine. Thank you very much, James. I hope Latin American audiences will like No Man's Land as much as I did. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
And
yo
have a great day.
también. Gracias.